Hello and welcome to another Broken Binding interview. My name's Stephen Aryan, and today we're talking to Evan Leikam. He's the debut author of Anji Kills a King, which comes out on May the 13th. Very, very soon. Very, very scary. So we're gonna talk to Evan about how he got here, his path of publication. But I kind of want to go back to talk about what sort of, because I know now you read a lot of fantasy books and you talk about them on social media and stuff, but were you reading a lot of fantasy and sci-fi and stuff growing up, or is this a more recent thing?
Yeah, I mean, like I think it was Harry Potter for sure. Like I was reading like Goosebumps and I don't know, Boxcar Kids and Animorphs and stuff when I was really young, and my parents read to me fairly frequently. And then I remember when I was in elementary school, I kept seeing like all these kids were reading Harry Potter. There was like a Harry Potter club at the library, and I was like, this is wild. So I remember I grabbed the first book. I think I got it from the library or something. And right after I had started the book, like the next day, I went on a like family vacation. And that was like like Sorcerer's Stone was like the first book that I was like 8 or 9, and I carried it around everywhere I went. I lost it at one point and had like a total like 9-year-old like breakdown about it, and then I found it again, and it was awesome. And so like I think that like like a lot of people my age and just a lot of people in general, I think like Harry Potter was kind of like that first like, oh, I really enjoy this like reading for pleasure kind of thing. And I think my mom noticed, and she bought me a copy of The Hobbit, and I just like I doubt I understood like half of it, I mean, I was like 9 or 10, but I understood enough, and I was so enamored with it. And I watched like the movie from the 70s, which scared the shit out of me. And I just like, I just thought Rankin Bass one, I watched that like over and over again. Yeah, that's
so good.
That's a lot for a 9-year-old to watch. But I think I reread Riddles in the Dark like over and over again. And then like my mom was definitely like, okay, this is obviously like a thing he likes to do. So she bought me like the T.A. Barron's like Lost Years of Merlin series, which was another big one for me. And so I kind of kept reading for pleasure like here and there. But then when I got to high school, I was all about like, hanging out with my friends and video games, and I was playing music and stuff. And so after high school, I kind of like wasn't reading that much. And I was trying to get like a rock band off the ground when I was like pretty young. And then a friend of mine, Chad, my old podcast co-host, lent me Patrick Rothfuss's Name of the Wind. And and that was kind of like my like renaissance, I guess, when I was like 20 or 21 or something, where I started that, and I was like, oh yeah, I love this. I forgot. I totally love this. And so I read that, and then like a year later, Wise Man's Fear came out. And then I read all of the Song of Ice and Fire books, and then it was just like a total downhill. Like, I got into Robin Hobb and Joe Abercrombie. Read everything I could of that. I read all the Wheel of Time books, and then kind of went through a period of trying stuff and not finishing the series, which now is like very annoying for me, because there's a lot of like first book in like the Powder Mage series, like I read that and I loved it, and then and then I just like moved on, and I was just trying like a bunch of different things to try to get my whole palette together and stuff. And I read like the Dune books, and stuck with a lot of sci-fi fantasy. And then once I started posting on TikTok and Instagram, that's when it blew up even more. Like I started really diversifying my reading, and you get so many recommendations from so many people. So I was, reading all kinds of stuff that I probably wouldn't have even got to. Like maybe I would have eventually, but lots of really cool stuff.
Yeah, even within the community, being reading a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, people are always mentioning things now that sometimes I'm like, I've just not heard of it, because there's so many books coming out, I can't keep up. But then there's some stuff that just completely goes off my radar.
So. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like there's a fantasy epic fantasy series by, I think his name is Richard Nell. I can't remember the name of the series, but it's like it's like one of the most popular self-published epic fantasy series right now, and I'm just hearing about it. And if you go on Reddit and look it up, it's like there's whole like hundreds of comments long discussions about this, and it's like like I'm never gonna get to this.
No.
I want to so bad.
Like last time we were talking, I think I said, "Oh, Chris Wooding," and you were like, "What?" Ember Blade, and I'm like, "Yeah." So it's like, Chris.
We talked. I just got the that Bernard Cornwell trilogy in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were talking, and I literally ordered it like while we were talking, and then it got to my house, and I was like, "Oh, another trilogy!" Oh my god! Like, fuck.
But we say this before. It's the same mode of storytelling that he does as you're currently reading in Empire of Silence now in Chris Arocchio, where it starts with an older character and then he retells his life and you kind of want to know what's been going on.
I'll read that story a million times.
Exactly. So that's what will hook you, and then the actual story of the Bernard Cornwell ones, because it's King Arthur and it's Camelot and the knights. That's what kept me going.
That's perfect.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I think that Sun Eater, I kind of updated my Instagram and Discord and stuff about it. But I started Sun Eater a few days ago, and I'm so excited that there's 7 of these things. Well, I guess technically there's 6, and then the 7th one comes out.
7's later this year, so you're okay. If you
I'm on track.
Yourself.
I'm just. It's one of those things where I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much, because I have been burned before. Like I have like started a series and been like, this is so I found it, like this is great, and then I get like 250 pages in and I'm like, this is starting to fall apart a little bit. I don't really know if I'm that excited, but I have a really good feeling about Sun Eater. I think that this is going to be, I kind of knew going into this year 2025 like Sun Eater would be the big like long series that I read this year, and it's already proving to be like I'm thinking about it when I'm not reading it, which is always a really good sign.
That's a good sign. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. It's an excellent series. I really enjoyed it. I've got book 6. I am not reading it yet. I'm holding off so that I don't have to wait like 9 months or 6 months until 7 comes out. I'm just going to be like, okay, let's just wait.
It's like September or something.
I think it's like November. So it's quite a while. So you've got loads to read. You're fine.
I know, but what if I binge it all in like 2 months and then I'm in the same spot as you? Like
squeeze in a Bernard Cornwell trilogy. Just kind of
I could
push things down a bit.
Totally.
And,
No, I got all this behind me. You're not wrong.
Same. I got more stuff to read. I'm just so far behind.
And I gotta write these things too now. So
well, welcome to the club. You got to do all of it at the same time now.
I was actually hanging out with a friend of mine last night, and they were like, "How much are you reading lately?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I mean, books that are published, not very many, but I'm still reading the same amount. I'm just reading the same page of my own Drek over and over and over again. The word count's probably the same." It's just the quality.
Well, hopefully you won't lose that joy for fantasy now that you're writing. Because I know some authors that once they start doing it, they're like, I can't read it when I'm writing it. I have to read something else because it's using too many of the same muscles. But
I seem to be able to read high fantasy while I'm writing it. Like I'm really happy. Yeah, it's like when I've got friends who can't read while they're in a car. Like when they're in a moving car, and I'm oh, I'm so lucky I can do that. I wouldn't be able to not. And so I feel like it's kind of like that same. I got lucky because I've talked to other authors who are like, oh no, I absolutely can't read high fantasy while I'm writing it, or the same genre that I'm writing in. I think lately, not because of the writing high fantasy books, but just I'm not really sure what it is, but I've been gravitating a lot towards like horror lately. I don't really know what that's about. I might have to unpack it with my therapist or something.
Yes.
But it's just what I've been I think it's just that horror seems to be like this this frontier of mystery, like where like anything is on the table with horror. Like everyone could just die at the end and the author doesn't care how you feel about it, and it's just awful. And there's just something about that where not, and like a lot of fantasy books are, you know, trying to like subvert tropes, or like they're leaning into tropes or whatever, but there is a certain kind of like a rhythm to fantasy books that I wouldn't call necessarily like predictable, but like there is just a certain rhythm that you can kind of go into expecting, depending on the specific genre and stuff. But with horror, it's like it could start a way and then just completely go off the rails, and there's no consideration for the reader experience. You know, it's just, this is what it is. It's going to be a completely blindsiding kind of thing. So I think I really like that about the genre.
Yeah, I think I've said this to some other authors, that the more they introduce more subgenres into fantasy, the more predictable it can become. Because if you know this is the kind of box you're reading for this type of fantasy, if it strays out of that, it's kind of uncommon. So
right.
When
we want it at the
fantasy,
same time, like
you do and you don't. Like, you want to know what you're getting, but if it was just
Mm-hmm.
called fantasy and it could be anything and anything could happen at all, it would be a lot more unpredictable. And I miss some of the joy of that. It's almost like someone recommends a book, but you don't read anything about it. You don't read any reviews. You don't read it blind and be like, okay, read this. This is good. I'm not telling you about it. Just go and read it. And you'd be like, okay. I think that's probably the only way I could get some really good surprise from fantasy.
I felt like that with last year. I think I read the Dragonlance Chronicles by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, and like that was, I really like that. For one, you know, it's like there's a certain coziness to it, and there's a certain kind of like classic fantasy feel to it, but also it's got that D&D style party on a quest thing where anything could happen. We're almost there. It's almost like they were rolling for like different events to happen, and it was really refreshing to read something that was, you know, maybe it was my expectations going into it. I thought that Dragonlance would be like this really predictable, just kind of color by numbers fantasy, and I thought that because it's older. But no, I was pleasantly surprised with how many twists and turns it had, and just how riveting it was. Oh man, those books are awesome.
So those were some of my foundational ones growing up when I was a kid. And what I always, I think Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman don't get enough credit, because not only did they do the Dragonlance books, but they did all sorts of stuff. They did the Dark Sword trilogy. They did Prophets of the Rose, which is a Middle Eastern inspired setting trilogy. They did the Deathgate cycle, which is 7 books. Like, nobody does 7 books. Who does that? And it's portal fantasy with tattoo magic. And I'm like, yes, please. So I loved that. They did so many different things in fantasy. I think reading Weiss and Hickman was what showed me that fantasy can be anything. It's basically this umbrella, and you can kind of sneak almost anything in and call it fantasy. And so I've tried to do that with stuff.
They're legends, and you're right. I think that they do deserve more credit for sure.
So when did you start writing your own and think, you know, I'm going to have a go at this?
So I used to be in a rock band. Like, I was touring around the States and in Europe, and you know, we didn't really we were scraping by. Like, we nobody even needs to go look it up. It's not a band that you've heard of. Like, but we were doing fine. I mean, it was fun to tour around and stuff, but yeah, like it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of sitting in the back of like a van for 6 or 7 hours to, you know, get to the next place. And so I was reading like a lot. You know, I read like Michael Sullivan's stuff. I finished up The Wheel of Time while I was out. Just lots and lots of different series and standalone books and stuff. And that was kind of how I spent my off time, was reading. And you know, because like when you're on tour, like it's really not glamorous, or I mean, you really are just sitting in a car for long periods of time, and then you like get to the venue, and then some, you know, disgruntled, annoyed like person that doesn't care about you, and it's totally valid, because it's like, who the hell are you? It's just like, here, put your stuff over here, here's 2 drink tickets, get the fuck out of my bar, you know, until it's like time for you to play. And so, you know, it's a lot of sitting around and a lot of being in places you've never been with people you don't know, and the people you do know, you're totally sick of being around them because you've been around them for weeks. So yeah, I read a lot. And then on one of the tours, I brought my laptop with me, and I was just like, let's give it a crack. Like, let's try it out. And it was really cool. Like I definitely caught the bug early, and I really enjoyed a lot of aspects to it. But it was very clear very quickly how much of an undertaking it really was. Like how,
Okay.
like, yes, it's really easy to get 20,000 words down about something that you're excited about for a couple weeks. And now you're asking questions. Now you're trying to actually build up a plot. Now you're trying to have these like cohesive scenes, and there's so many plates spinning, and it became very clear while I was riding on the road. I was like, I think I'm just gonna read. Like I'm not putting this down forever, but like this is obviously like a much bigger undertaking than I thought it was. And then so I kept kind of picking at it and stuff. And then when COVID came around in 2020, my band like dissolved. Like obviously everybody's bands, like unless you were like really making money, like you're not, like if you're mostly playing mid-sized venues regionally, all of those closed down. Like and even like practice spaces, like I don't know how they do it in the UK, but here in the Pacific Northwest, what's really popular is someone will buy like a big building, and it'll have like a bunch of rooms in it, and then you rent out the rooms to bands. So it's very cool, but it's very loud, and it's very like tight knit. Like there's a lot of people in one building, so even that closed down, so we couldn't even practice. So the band like totally dissolved, and so then I was kind of like, well, I'm stuck in my house all the time. I can't even, I'm not playing music. Like my whole like social circle just like evaporated. So let's give this another crack. And I think my reading also, like I was reading a lot more, and so I felt like I could be a lot more consistent in the discomfort and like getting used to that discomfort of working on something and not being happy with it. It wasn't as much like this little side project thing, but more something that I was actually like, okay, let's do this every day. Like, let's do this. Let's commit a little bit more to this. And I mean, it's a lot like what I noticed about the writing process, and I'm still noticing too, is that it's a lot like learning an instrument in that you, when you're learning an instrument, you want it to sound good. It'd be awesome if it sounded good. But it's not going to, like, for a while, for a lot longer than you think. And it might sound good sometimes as you get better, but for the most part, you're not satisfied with, you're listening to music that you really like. You sit down and you try to play piano or guitar or drums or something, and it's not even close. But in order to progress and get to a point where you are satisfied with it, you have to stick with it, and you have to sit with that discomfort and sit and say, yes, I know that this is not where I want it to be, but eventually it will be. And it's the same thing with writing, where those months during COVID, and especially, I got a big kick in the motivation pants when I started posting online too, and reading a whole lot of other things and growing an audience. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I think that if I did put something out, I might be able to gain a little traction now that some people have seen my face. But I still to this day, like, I still have to remind myself, like, while I'm drafting or while I'm revising, like, yeah, this is a frustrating part. I'm not getting down what's in my head, like, clearly on the page. And even when I do, it's not what I really want it to look like or what I really want it to say. Or, there's all kinds of different roadblocks you run into where you're like, I thought this was going well, but now I thought about this other thing. So now it's a total mess, and I might have to throw it all out. And it's just, you get those frustrating moments. But I am now familiar with having crossed the threshold of the light at the end of that creative tunnel. And I know that you can. Like, I know you can get there. How long and dark the tunnel is kind of depends on the day. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, hey, it's working. All right, cool. But yeah, I'm very grateful for my time in, like, not only learning an instrument, but just the grind that it takes to put out art that you're proud of. It's a grind, for sure.
Yeah. So are you still refining your process then of how you write a book from start to finish?
Yeah. Which is great because it's under a big 5 publisher with deadlines now. So
no pressure. So
Tor, if you're listening, I'm actually totally on top of everything.
He's
100%
ahead,
of the
he's
time.
Done. He's great.
Yes. Oh, I'm done. Yeah. I think that my process is changing a little bit, and I've been very vocal about it. to my audience and stuff. My initial process was to throw as much at the wall as I possibly could. Take kind of like a shotgun approach to drafting, which I still kind of do, but now working on some other projects now, and even with the second book in the Rising Tide trilogy, I've kind of like switched it up a little bit, and I'm like, let's do a little more work up front before we're drafting scenes. A little more outlining work, a little more world build work. The story always comes first. The characters always come first, obviously. But now that I've been through the revising process on deadline and stuff, it's like, let's try to take as much work off that back end as we can too, because it is important to get things down and to work, like I said, to work through those difficult moments. And sometimes when you're working on a scene, it's just like, I don't know where this is going, so whatever. Like, this stuff happens, and then you can kind of like limp your way to the next scene you're confident about. But I've noticed that when I have too much of that, or when I don't outline enough, I guess, to put it simply, a lot, like, the revising work is kind of a nightmare, because you haven't got enough like concrete in there for that building. It's kind of all held up with sticks. So that's kind of like my process seems to be changing a little bit to, let's do more work up front. Let's do more outlining. Let's, really work out these beats to this story. And then another thing I've noticed as I've been doing this more often is, you could have the strongest outline in the world, and as you're drafting, things come up. Things change, you get different ideas, you're in a different zone, and now all of a sudden a character does something that you're like, oh, well, I like that more, but it's gonna rub up against this outline in a very abrasive way. So now I have to shift a few things around, but I have that outline. Yes. It's almost like I know now, like, if I have to make a change, I know what that change means to this larger structure now, instead of just. So yeah, like I think my earlier attempts at writing were, they were great, and I'm proud of them, and I've got some other books that I wrote before Angie Kills a King that I'm proud of, that'll probably never see the light of day. But I did take that kind of more shotgun approach of like, just get it all out and we'll fix it all later. And it's like, okay, that's nice and poetic, Evan, but we're working here. Like, we have a deadline. We want to actually build a good story here. So yeah, it's changing.
It's always about finding what works for you. I know some people do really heavy, detailed planning, and that's how it works for them. And then they're less thinking and just more doing. Like, they'll spend, 4 or 5 months planning every single thing, and then they could write the book in a month, because they're not worrying about all the little bits and pieces. Whereas other people, I think I'm a bit more like you. I will have a loose skeleton for the whole book, and I'll plan like the first third or the first quarter in more detail and write that. And as that changes, I can then flex the next third or quarter and write that in detail, and then write it, plan it, and then write it, and so on. So I'm constantly adjusting it, because if I put everything in concrete, like you said, and then I try and change something early on, I can't move the rest because I've locked it in too tight.
Sure.
And then I spend like 4 weeks just trying to unpick everything. And I'm like, I've just wasted a month.
Yeah, it is. I try to. It's such a balancing act of, you don't want it to be like this big rigid thing that you're totally locked into and nothing can ever change, because then it's like you're not really having fun anymore.
No.
Like, it feels like you're just checking things off a list, and I don't want to do that. But at the same time, there needs to be an adult in my room. Like, there needs, like, I really do. Like, I've really tried the other way, and like, I think it totally works for some authors, but for me specifically, I think I'm starting to find that a strong outline is the way to go for me. It kind of feels like it's like a checklist in a good way sometimes, where it's like, okay, cool, I got that scene, that's what I wanted it to be. Nice. So now let's move on to this next thing. But I also don't write scenes out of order. I don't know if you do that.
No.
I can't. I know that some authors do it. I can't. I write it like I'm reading. And then I revise like I'm reading too. But exactly. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed that because I do this top to bottom type process, it's like a it's like a sieve, almost like where it's like the first like 2/3 is like clean, and then every time I revise, it just bunches all this shit to the bottom, you know. So it's like creates like more work towards the end, which is totally fine. But when I was writing Angie Kills a King, I noticed there was a phase where I was like, damn, the first like 5 chapters of this are flawless, like this is great. And then I'd keep going and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot the rest of this sucks. I have to fix this. I have to get this fixed. I did.
I still find it wastes less time by having some kind of a structure for
Absolutely.
me. You just know where it's going, and if something comes up for like a month or a couple of weeks, then you leave, you have to step away and you come back. You still got a roadmap. If you've got nothing and you don't know where you're going, it's going to take you a couple of weeks to get your head back in the same space. So
yeah, and it's I find it more motivating to like you know, like writing. I've noticed, and I'm like, for the record, I'm still so new to all of this. Like I really am not an authority on this. I'm speaking 100% from my experience, but I find that I write better when I'm consistent. Like I write better when I write every day, and I find that I'm a little bit more disciplined and a little more motivated to write every day when I have like this kind of period mentally before I sit down at a keyboard where I'm like, I know what I'm getting into today. Like I know where we're at in this book, and I'm gonna go do that. It's kind of like when I'm excited to like read a different book or play a video game or something where it's like, okay, oh yeah, I'm at that spot now, and we're gonna go work on that. And then it kind of compartmentalizes it, and it doesn't seem like this big giant project that I'm trying to get done. It's like, no, today we're working on that scene that was kind of a mess, but we fixed this other thing earlier, so now it's a little bit better, so let's go work on that scene. And then it's like, okay, now we're doing just a little bit every day until this thing is done. And so that seems to help way more than just like, oh my god, we got to make this book a book today we're making a book. And it's like, you're never gonna
it's this scene, it's this chapter, it's this character's moment, whatever it is, that's you've got to kind of just do that one thing, and when you've done that one thing, you can do the next one thing, and it's just 100 or 1,000 little things that gradually
it's so many little things. Oh my god, it's an endless amount. It's fun though.
So one thing that happens to me is I've found a way to deal with this now. I constantly get ideas for things that I want to fix, or ideas for stuff that I know I need to improve, but rather than going back and doing them, then I'll just make a note of them. So I've got a pile, so I can keep moving forward. Like you're saying, I start at chapter 1, I go to the end.
Yeah,
I don't want to keep jumping back and fixing things. So, are you thinking of, I need to fix that thing? Do you go and do it, or do you just leave it for later?
Okay, so you know how when you've got things to do in your normal life and you make a list, and because you made a list, you now feel accomplished, and you get that little dopamine kick. You're like, hey, I wrote it down, like, nice. And then you never fucking do it. And so like I try to avoid that when I'm doing, because I do write myself notes and stuff, because I know I'm gonna have to go back and revise stuff. But typically I'll leave a note if it's like a major change, and it's like like that rule of like, if you can do it in 5 minutes, just do it right now. Kind of thing. I kind of take that approach when I'm revising, where it's like, let's keep moving. If it's something that I can, if it's like a blocking issue or like a consistency issue or something, let's get that done right now. And then if it's like, oh no, this whole scene needs to go and be replaced with this other thing because I wrote this other thing later, it's like, okay, well, let's make a note of that, and we'll fix that on a day where I'm not fixing other stuff. That seems to work really well for me, because if it's something that I wasn't really planning on fixing that day, it's like I don't want to get mired down in this big process of so it really does depend on, it's like a total situational thing where if it's like, if it really is major, like it's going to change the entire story, I kind of don't want to dig into it immediately, like right when I think about it. So I'll just leave the note, and then once I've kind of come to the end of the story, and then I'm back at the beginning again and combing through again, it's like, now I'm that much more familiar with the flow of this story. Now I'm that much more familiar with exactly where I want this to end up. And now I've got a better mindset going into this major change. But I don't know. It could change. I have no idea. I could be watching this in 2 years and be like, "That's a horrible idea." Like, stop telling people how to do this.
It's always what works for you, though. This is it. Like, other people have other approaches, and as long as they finish the book,
just
that's
get the
all
book
that
done.
matters.
Yeah, like
finish that draft. You've got to finish that draft. However you get there.
Yep.
How long it takes, as long as you finish it, it's consistency over motivation every time. It's discipline over motivation every time. Because some days just don't want to write, but I need to get the words done. I need to hit my word count for the day or the week or the month. So I got to get it done. And
I just tell myself one paragraph at a time.
Yeah,
one paragraph at a time. Like it's like there's a finite number of paragraphs, Evan, and if you do one at a time, you'll eventually get to the last one. Like there's just no argument against that. Like there's just, and like I said before about compartmentalizing it, it's just like with anything else, where if you break things into smaller bits, they're a lot more manageable.
Yes.
And it's, and you know, like you said, and I'm sure a lot of authors feel like this. There are days where I'm like, I just don't even want to look at it right now. Like I just know it's a mess and I don't want to deal with it. But I think I remember reading an AMA with Sebastian de Castel, who is, if you're listening right now and you haven't read any of his stuff, he's fucking awesome.
I love his books.
He's great. He's a really good author.
So good.
I think he needs more credit. Like he needs to be bigger. But I remember I was reading an AMA of his on Reddit once, and somebody said, "How do you get the motivation to write every day?" And he said, "I'll tell myself, just go do one sentence." Like you can do one sentence. You know you can do one sentence. There's no argument against this. Like there's no world which exists where I can't sit down and write one sentence.
Yeah.
It's silly. Like I text more than that during the day. You know what I mean? You can do it. Yeah, like you can do it. There's no mental gymnastics you could do where you feel okay about not writing one sentence. You'll never feel okay about it. So just do it. And I found that it's really helpful to think like that, because it's like, obviously you're going to do more than one 9 times out of 10. Like maybe you will only do one. That's happened to me. I have literally only written one sentence and then come back. Yeah. Just because it was just, but you know, I did it though. And the cool thing, it's like with, you know, like exercising. It's like, okay, just go outside. It's like, go walk around the block. And it's like, okay, well, now you're listening to music. You've walked a couple blocks. Let's go walk a little more and keep listening to music. And now before you know it, you went on a 2 or 3 mile walk. And that's way better than sitting inside all day. Yeah. I mean, and believe me, I am without a doubt the laziest person I know. Like, and I'm not, I don't want to go on like a self-depreciating thing. I'm very excited and very proud of myself. But also I have to give myself these kinds of small tasks. This is just how my brain works. It's how I've noticed, like, because once you're actually sitting and doing something, you're in a completely different mindset than you were before you started doing it. Now you're doing it. Yeah. So what I've found is, like, with writing, as much as I love it and as much as I want to do this for the rest of my life, sometimes you do get a little fatigued with looking at your own inability like on a screen, and you just kind of want to avoid that discomfort. But if you say to yourself, like, okay, yes, it is uncomfortable, but what if we just sat with that discomfort for like 5 minutes? We can totally do that. Yeah. And then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I like this. So I like the sound the keyboard makes. I like deleting stuff and putting better stuff in. And oh yeah, I forgot that I wrote that paragraph that was actually pretty rad and leads into this other cool thing. And then before you know it, like an hour has gone by, and then you can call it quits if you want. But
yeah, ways to trick your brain and yourself into doing it. But you definitely still need time off, I think, to just decompress and recharge in however you do, you know.
Yeah, I think like the way that I've been taking time. So I'm working on the revisions right now for the second book.
Okay.
And I when I was working on the first draft, I went through just a really awful, crappy breakup, which happens to everybody. And it was just bad timing because I was like working on this draft and I was like two-thirds of the way through the draft, and everything came to such a standstill, and I just couldn't every time I tried getting into that world, I was just like, I don't want to be here or anywhere right now. Like, I just don't like any of this. This isn't what I want to think about. It's not what I want to talk about. And then I started working on a completely different project about somebody going through a breakup. And it was cool because I was being productive, but it was like a break for me. I needed to take a break from this world while still working and still getting some things done. So again, it's kind of like exercise where you have like these active rest days, you know, where it's like, okay, yeah, you're not running 10 miles today, but you can walk a little bit or change it up or go, go swimming or do something else that's still kind of connected. So I feel like I have like those kinds of breaks, and then I have days where I just play Oblivion all day.
Fair, yeah.
Oblivion remastered is so good. Holy shit!
I haven't played the remastered yet, but it's
so cool. It's so good, man. Todd Howard, he did it. Thank you, Todd.
There's always something that tempts me back. Old games that I think, oh, I really want to play that again. I wouldn't mind, and then that's 200 hours. But it's good. It's time for rest.
You're working. It's fantasy. Hey.
It's true.
You're doing research.
Yeah, I'll say that. Sure. Yeah.
I know my editor told me I needed to watch Andor.
Yes.
I still haven't watched it. But there is like a revolution kind of like plot thread in Anji Kills a King, and she messaged me and she's like, "Hey, you need to watch Andor." And I was like, "Oh, maybe I do for work." Yes, of course.
Research. I mean,
I have to.
That sounds great.
I'm excited to watch it. Right now, I'm watching The Terror, the AMC show that based on the Dan Simmons book.
Yes,
it's really. I read the book like 3 or 4 years ago or something, and I loved it. It's really good. But the show is like, it's just, oh my god, it's such a good adaptation. Like, it's so spooky and like intense and. Oh man! So I'll get to Andor eventually. I'll get back to work.
That's why you're doing horror at the moment. You're
I don't know.
You're watching the Terror, and you think, oh, I want to write some of that. Yeah,
I kind of do.
So let's talk about Angie. Where did this come from? Where do you know where the idea for it came from, or did you start with the themes or the characters or the world? What was the seed of the idea?
I think it started as kind of like an experiment where I was like, it'd be so cool if I had a story where most of the exposition and world building and stuff was done by two people talking. Like having I think in film they call it a two-hander. So doing a lot of the work through dialogue is what I really wanted to do. Like what situation could two people be in that would require them to talk a lot, that would require a relationship to build while other things were going on, obviously. And that was kind of like the initial, like, that'd be really cool to have a book that was basically just like two main characters, which I think I did with this book. And then another thing too was there's a and okay, so I want to be careful with my words here. Like what I'm about to talk about is not specifically what this book is about. But I was hanging out with some friends, and one of them said, wouldn't it be cool if somebody assassinated the president? And I was like, no, that wouldn't be cool at all. Actually, that would be a nightmare. Like, as nice as that would feel for in a personal way, as nice as that might feel, the real world consequences of something that major happening in a climate like this is
catastrophic.
It's really bad. It would probably, I don't know for sure. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a political like theory guy or anything. But like, I imagine that something like that happening would probably be really bad. And then I kind of took that and ran with it. And I was like, okay, well, a lot of the time in fantasy books, a lot of resolution comes from a person, like an antagonist, not being alive anymore. You either punch your way to a victory, which makes everything better, or you find a way to kill the right people, and then put the correct people in charge. and I think that works with a lot of stories, but I thought, like, what if that happened and then it didn't really work? Like, what if that, this big effort to change the status quo, while well-intentioned, was totally the wrong move? Like, it needed to be a completely different plan. So kind of taking that idea of taking down this one, if we can only take this person down in this fantasy story, then everything will be fine. And then turning it into this kind of, okay, well, no, the reality on the ground of this situation happening is actually kind of a lot worse. And now, but then the other idea for that was like, okay, well, I don't really want to have like a whole book of like different factions and like POV characters dealing with this. Right. And like, I didn't want to get too mired down with that. But so I thought, what if someone just killed a king and then ran off, and then just, and another reason that I was kind of drawn to this story was, like this idea of somebody, and not even just a political sense, but in any kind of sense, like a personal sense or a relationship sense, but just like acting in a very emotional way, and doing something without very much planning or thought or consideration, can have really like real world negative consequences. Mm-hmm. And so I've gone through that process more times than I wish I have. And it's painful. Like, it's painful to realize you're really wrong about something. Like, it's physically painful to realize, like, oh, that decision that I made was such a bad one. It was such a bad idea. There's all these consequences to it. And so like Angie, like I feel like every character is somewhat of a self-insert. But Angie for me is, it's a lot of me communicating with myself and being like, hey man, you really thought you had it all figured out. Like, you really did. Like, you thought so confidently that you had everything figured out that you were willing to do this stupid shit. And when you did that, actually, it wasn't very well thought out, and it affected people that you care about. Like, it affected your community. If it affects people, your actions really do have consequences. Mm-hmm. And so, like in Angie Kills a King, it's a little hyperbolized. If you read the book, you'll know. There are definitely some things that happen that have not happened to me. But it's just this idea that you have room to grow. The world is bigger and more complicated than you think it is. And sometimes you need those hard lessons to really kind of kick you in the mouth and say, like, hey, no, there's what you want, and then there's a reality, and then we have to kind of like reconcile here. And then also with the other character who's much older than Angie, not a paragon themselves. Like, also, even though they're older, they still have issues. And actually, if you think about it, the older you get, the more time you have to traumatize yourself and others. And maybe you don't learn every lesson you need to learn by old age. And so having those kinds of characters kind of like stuck together was really fun to write. Like, every conversation is a conflict. Every conversation is an issue. They really... one person really wants to go somewhere and one person really does not. And so that presents all kinds of different situations. You can throw all kinds of different things at them. And, there's like this kind of big capital P plot of like this destination that one person wants to get to. But then you have these more immediate problems that are an issue for both of them. So that was a blast. I really liked writing it. It was cool.
So Angie's just like a regular person that works in the castle as a servant, and she's the one that's obviously seen this king, thinks he's terrible. This isn't a plot spoiler. This is the name of the book.
No, it's in there.
So literally, she's thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe if he was gone, things would be better. She kills him, expecting things to get much better, and then of course, things inevitably get worse. But the character you mentioned, Hawk. Tell me about the magic, because so he's someone, who's been sent after Angie, and they wear a mask. They're called the Menagerie, these hunters, and Hawk finds Angie first. But tell me about the magic and the masks and how that works.
Sure. So the magic system that I devised, which I'm still kind of hashing out, this was a debut, so there are definitely some There are some parts of this book where I was like, that's good enough for me. And then I just got, like, I will admit that for sure. Like, I think that me working on the second book has been a pretty big undertaking because I'm trying to flesh out a little bit more and like trying to take a step back and be like, okay, what is this actually? But the magic system that I kind of devised was one where there is the consequence of using it is that it takes time off of your life, basically.
Okay.
And so, but it's all based on words, and they're esoteric words that only the privileged, very rich who go to a specific school, which only allows wealthy people into it, are able to learn. And then there's a black market also, which I'm sussing out in the second book. It's not in the first book, but there's like a black market essentially for these words. And the how do I put this? The less complicated the charm, like the words that you're using are, the more time it takes off of your life. So the less esoteric this combination of syllables is, the less learned you are as a maxia, as somebody who uses a system, the more consequence it has on your own self. So obviously there's a lot of parallels to that where it's a privilege to have wealth and be able to learn at this one specific school these words that'll take fewer days or months or weeks or whatever off of your life for using them, which means that the more powerful spells are relegated to the more powerful people. So I really liked that in the sense that there's a kind of like socio-political and economic like consequence to using this magic. There's it ties in very much with some other themes that I'm trying to explore, which I was excited about, but it is I'm still kind of working out a few of the much finer details about it. But with the masks, the leader of the Menagerie had these masks made, which they can improve your eyesight and your hearing. And the way that the magic system in this series works is that if you have a charm active, if you've cast a charm and you die, the charm never fades away because it's based on your life essence. So if all of your life essence at once gets spent, it's just like it never stops.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was fun to play around with too. In fact, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but one of the charms that the hawk casts on Angie is, I don't want to spoil too much, but basically it was a cool mechanic because like I made it so that Angie can't kill her, because if she does, then this charm will never stop.
Right.
So that was really fun to work in too. But I wanted a magic system that has further like social implications, like the idea of magic being for not only being for a select few, but the most efficient type of magic that will have less of an effect on your life being only for a select few. I thought was really interesting.
So a poorer person might be able to black market their way into getting some kind of magical charm, use it, and it could take like 10 years off their life. Whereas if they had the skill and the knowledge, it might only take a couple of days
or seconds even. Like some of these maxia are very well learned and very wealthy and very powerful, and it also, I mean, if you really want to dig into it, you're able to, if you're that powerful with this magic and you have this much esoteric, like very restricted knowledge, you can kind of keep that in a family, and you can kind of like keep that wealth and that power going. Right. And so it's not a good system, like at all. Like this should be widely available or available to nobody. But it is, like, in my mind, like a pretty good example of how resources and knowledge are kind of kept within wealthy bounds sometimes. They know how valuable this stuff is, and they don't want the poors to get a hold of it. What if they did? Like, we wouldn't, we'd have a whole situation on our hands if the poors found out. It's very fun to work with, but I will say, like, as a reader, somebody who's read about a lot of magic systems, like allomancy in Mistborn, for example, is such an amazing magic system. I would say I have my issues with like King Killer and stuff, but like I think that the magic system in King Killer is fantastic. It's really, really good. I want to take a little bit more time. This is why the second book is actually taking a little bit too. But I want to take some more time and really flesh it out, because I'm not a fan of like just magic works because
just
magic. Like you just try magic harder. So I do really like a technical magic system a lot. But as a reader, it's like as a writer, I want it technical because I want it to make as much sense as possible. But as a reader, I'm kind of like, whatever works, like just make it cool.
It's that hard magic versus soft magic system.
Sure, or world building in that sense too.
Yeah, I have it in the background. I think a great one is Pete McLean in his current series, Priest of Lies, and those ones. Magic is weird and disturbing and creepy and dangerous, but people don't know how it works. But he knows, but he's not telling on the page because you don't need to know. So as a reader, it remains mysterious.
Totally.
Whereas if he explained it out, I would have gone, it's not nearly as scary now because you told me exactly how it works. I'm like, it's a science now. I'm bored. It was weird before. Now it's just science. I'm like, nah. So I prefer that balance where the writer has to know the consequences. There has to be repercussions.
Exactly. Like if anyone's going to know the rules, it has to be the writer, because I feel like with magic systems specifically, what you're doing with a magic system is it's almost like writing rules out for like a board game.
Yeah.
And it's like you're going to get to a crux point with this magic system where something's going to happen and you need to know why it happened. Like it has consequences to the plot, and if you don't understand exactly like why that happened, it can really fall flat. Like it can really feel like, oh well, good thing they knew how to do that thing that saved everybody. Like no, it's gotta be a little bit deeper than that, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, you've got to earn it. If you set something up with a reader, you then have to pay it off, and you have to earn it with them. Otherwise they'll just fall out of favor with the book if you break your own rules to solve a problem with the plot all of a sudden.
I know. I remember reading something that was like, it's okay to get into trouble through an inconvenience, but you can't get out of trouble with a convenience. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So things can happen fortuitously to get you into a bind, but it has to work out in a way that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's good to remember.
So how was it getting editorial feedback on Angie from, you're working with a big 5 publisher, and suddenly you've got an editor going, you spent a couple of years working on Angie before you give it to someone, and then they're suddenly going, okay, now we want you to work on this, we want you to work on that. How did you find feedback? Because I still struggle with editorial feedback.
I think that this is the first time I've gotten this far into this process, right? So like I've written other books and stuff, and I've even had my friends read stuff and give me feedback and stuff. But my editor, her name's Stephanie Stein. She's up for a Hugo Award right now. Actually,
fantastic!
Super cool. I know. But I think that going into the process, I had to tell myself, like, okay, Evan, yes, you did work on this. These are professionals, right? Like we all want to put a good story together. Like Tor wants to make money. I want to make money. I want to tell a really good story. Tor has a legacy to keep up, right? I mean, like Tor is a gigantic name in fantasy books, and they have a certain benchmark for quality. They know what's good and what's not good, and so I did have to kind of have that conversation with myself when I got my initial round of edits back, because it was the first time I'd ever seen that before. Now I'm like way more open to it, but like the first time was definitely pretty jarring, where I was like, oh, I guess that's not gonna work. Like, there were definitely a couple moments where I was like, hey, like I did this, like, come on. Like, but one thing to keep in mind is, and for anyone listening who is going to go through this process at some point, like your face has been so close to this project. It's such a blessing to have somebody look at it and be honest with you, because if you give it to your friends, they're going to pull their punches unconsciously. Like, but somebody who does this for a living is going to tell you, I'm lucky that Stephanie is an angel walking this earth and extremely nice. My agent Seth is also super nice, but he was like blunt because my first real feedback was from my agent. And Seth really knows fantasy, and he's a great agent, and he from his feedback you can really tell that he has a big love for fiction and fantasy. And so there were a few things where he was like, nope, like no, like this is not gonna work. And I really appreciated that, because like friends of mine wouldn't have done that. Like they would have done a variation of that. But getting that kind of like, hey, like I really don't think this is gonna work.
Yeah.
That is so valuable. It stings a little bit. And I think that part of the reason it stings is because you did spend so much time with it. For me, one of the reasons it stings is because for one, I know how much work it's going to take. And I'm like, fuck, like this is going to take a while. But then the other thing too, is it's like, you are trying to make it the best that you can without an editor. Like there's no part of my mind that's like, or and I'm sure yours and plenty of other authors, there's no part of my mind that's like, the editor will suss that out. You know what I mean? Like it's not what the process is. It's like I really am making as hard a go of it as I can initially. And so what's really frustrating is like writing a scene that you're really proud of and that you think is working really well. And then it doesn't click. Like it's just not working, and but it really did work for you. Like, and having that kind of feedback where it's like, I kind of see where you're getting at, but like, what do you mean by this? And it's like, but it makes so much sense. Like I know, because I thought of it, so obviously it makes sense. Like how would it not? It made enough sense for me to write it down. And so that collaborative effort, it's such a funny thing, especially with this job, because like so much of this job is not collaborative.
No,
like so much of this job is just you sitting and just fixing stuff, and it's getting it to where you want it to be. And then someone comes in and it's like, okay, it's time to collaborate. Like, okay, it's time for more ideas to come into here. And you're like, I just spent like 6 months by myself with this project. And it's like, it's a very vulnerable feeling for sure. To have somebody who is really good at this, like who is probably better than you at this, like who has seen so many projects and seen so many stories go from not working to working. So like when you do get that feedback, you're like, I know you're right. I know. But it's like, I wanted it this way. And sometimes actually, I mean, I have had moments where I've been like, no, that's I'm keeping it exactly like that. And part of the process, and like what I've learned through this process, is like you don't have to literally do every single thing your editor tells you to do. Like they're not writing the book for you. Like you're not necessarily limping it into their hands and then they take over the grunt work. That's not exactly what it is. But it's like what I've noticed my editor does is she'll say, hey, like I thought this was like this. Can you reconcile these two things? Or, hey, you mentioned earlier that this was this way, but now you're writing it like this. Just kind of pointing out those kinds of inconsistencies and issues on like a narrative level. And then what's really helpful sometimes too is my editor now at this point seems to know the characters as well as I do, which is really awesome. It's really, really cool. So she'll kind of catch things and be like, hey, would she really say that right now? You know, like, are we really there yet? Like, is this question really in her mind, or should we like incubate that and save that for over here? So like stuff like that is extremely helpful, because sometimes when you're in the drafting phase, you're just like, this is the perfect time to mention this. And it's like, well, let's look at this as like a bigger whole. Let's look at where else this might be for a bigger impact. So those kinds of things are really, I mean, they're so valuable. But to your earlier question, like, yeah, definitely there are parts where I'm like, I thought I was doing this. I thought I was an author, you know, but I guess
I think part of it comes with you've spent months on this thing and they've looked at it for like a couple of weeks and you're like, how could you possibly understand my brilliance? But what you actually need is someone to not have all the stuff in your head and look at it with just exactly what's on the page and go, this doesn't make sense. And you're like, oh yeah, I thought I'd wrote that bit in it. No, I didn't.
It's in your head. It's in headcanon. Or it's on some weird Word document somewhere where you you made a note of it, and then that's good enough for you, and then you're moving on. Because like man, it's such a huge learning process, man. It's like I keep saying, like I keep learning things, but it's so awesome to learn these things. Like another thing that I learned is there's like the book that you're writing, and then there's the book that people are reading. That's something that I've really tried to keep in mind. It's like I know what's going on as I'm writing it, but remember, people don't know some of these things. Like remember that as clear as this is clear enough in your head for you to write it, where as you're writing it, you're taking up the rest of that imaginary space as you're writing it. But a reader might not necessarily do that. And so keeping a reader in mind, keeping that reader experience in mind, I mean, unless you're not writing for anyone to read it, then I guess go nuts. But I'm writing for, and you're writing, and most authors are writing because they want people to have a good time with the story.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I kind of like look back over like blocking or like description or like a conversation, and then I will notice like, oh, that really isn't clear enough. Like, yeah, that really was pretty clear in my head, but now that I'm looking at it, it's like I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of somebody who's reading this for the very first time, and it's like, oh, yeah, I should probably be a little clearer about that. And sometimes I need someone to tell me.
Yeah. Having someone have that distance from the project, I think is absolutely invaluable. I'm still learning. I'm still learning books on. I still find things that I'm constantly thinking, I thought this makes sense, and then you're ready to point something out, and you're like, oh yeah, I missed that. So it's you're always learning on the job. I think with every book that you do, you get better at some things, and there's other things you rediscover or you don't even thought about, and then on the next book you're like, right, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna try and do that on the next one. And like you said, it's like playing an instrument. You've got to do it got to get better by doing it. And that's the only way.
Yeah, it's really the only way. And I mean, yeah, like I've been playing drums for like 15 years, and wow, God, that's so long. Oh my God. But I've been my knees. But I've been playing drums for like a really long time, and like I'll listen to like a Mars Volta song or something. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that guy's doing. Like, like I've been learning this thing and we were talking earlier about Chris Rocchio's Sun Eater, and I'm only like 100 pages in, and there's still like there's a few paragraphs I've read where I'm like, damn, man, like this, how the fuck did you do that? Like, that was an amazing paragraph. Like, it's efficient, the language is so great, you're saying so much with this, like it's impactful, like it's like you're checking all these boxes, and it's just it's so refreshing. And so like it depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, like you could look at stuff like that and be like, oh, I'll never be that good. Yeah, maybe you might not, but it's also very motivating. It's like I would love to be that good, like I want to work to I want to bring this feeling that I just had reading Sun Eater to another person with my work, and not only that feeling, but that kind of communication. Like Chris Rocchio, with a couple of those paragraphs I've already read, is really communicating something to me. And like I really appreciate that as a reader and a writer. Like that is his brain communicating onto a page an idea that has probably been rolling around in his head for a long time, and he was able to do it in such an entertaining and digestible way. And that's what, in my opinion, like the best writing is. Like if you can really efficiently and effectively get something across that's been just kind of like hanging in your brain for a while, and then somebody else is like, totally, it's just like, oh, there's no better feeling, man. It's awesome. It's so cool.
You plan something, you write it, the reader gets it, and you make that connection. That's the most rewarding. That's like, oh, right, they got it. Brilliant. I'm happy with that. It all makes sense.
And sometimes they don't. And I mean, I'm trying not to like religiously read my reviews.
Don't, never.
Not,
don't.
Yeah,
don't. We said this. Don't.
Every now and then someone will. It's already happened to me, but I'll get tagged in like a negative review, and I'm like, dude, come on, like, stop tagging me.
Never. That's all. I was never tag authors in there. That's terrible.
But it is. I mean, it is kind of illuminating to see people say like, oh, well, this didn't really work for me, and that's just the way it goes. Like that's just there are things that I read. There are a whole series that I've read where I get it. I feel like I know what they're trying to do, but it's just not really landing with
Yeah,
me. And it's just the way it is.
it's personal taste. It's, a slow book for one person is another person saying, I like to sink into a book and soak into it. I want it to be
Sure.
dense. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so you can't, if you only write fast books, someone else will be like, yeah, but I want them to slow down. I want to spend more time with the characters. I'm like, so you can't win. It's like, everyone brings their own stuff. Everyone brings their own needs and wants, and you can't predict or write for everybody. So you just got to write the pace and the style as you want. And that's
exactly it. Yeah, and it's so cliche. It's this. I mean, this point has been gone over so many times by so many authors, I'm sure. But really, like, I couldn't say it better. I mean, like you're setting out to write something that you haven't read.
Yeah.
Like that's what I wanted to do with Angie Kills a King. It is a very tightly wound book. It is very fast paced. But I was in a mood when I wrote it. I was in a mood. I wanted to write something brooding and, like I wanted a main character who was just fucking annoying. Like I've already seen some feedback that like Angie's such an unlikable character, and I'm like, I know. Yeah, I wouldn't hang out with her. Yeah, she's awful, actually. She's
on purpose.
Like, that was me when I was 22. Like, just absolutely unbearable. Like, can't be wrong. Fuck you. Like, just, like I know you told me I couldn't do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. To the point where I'm sure a lot of people already have put the book down because she really is. She sucks. Like, she is I'll say it first. Like, Angie is not a good person. Like, and neither is the Hawk. Like, they're both pretty shitty people. But that's the mood that's the kind of story I wanted to read. Like, and so I wrote it, and I wanted to read something that was like, we're cutting out a lot of the chaff here. Like, we're not going to do a big like world building set piece that takes 18 pages, and that's just not what I'm doing. But maybe in 5 or 10 years, that is what I'll be doing. I could do that. I wouldn't mind writing like a big 8-book, 1,000-page per book like thing. Like
that saga. Yeah, you'll write your own saga.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I mean, he's reading stuff like. Have you read Steven Erickson's Malzahn books?
Some I haven't finished.
Yeah,
like they're I need to take a break as I'm working on them.
It's funny. Like, I was always kind of like, I don't really ever want to do that. It's so much work. And then I listened to an interview with him. I think he was on 10 Very Big Books, and they said something like, "Oh, so your process for notes for all of this," and he was like, I don't do that. Like, yeah, I don't have like a notebook with all my ideas, or it's just all in his head.
Wow.
And I was like, that can't be right. Like, really? Like that? Like, either this man is like an actual like genius, right? Which I do think that Steven Erickson is a genius, but like, or he's totally fucking with these people. Like, he's like lying. But I don't think that he does. And it was very motivating. It was like, man, that's so cool that like we were talking about earlier with process, right? Like, there is no one way to do this stuff. No. Like, there is no, like, if you want to write the big thing, go write the big thing. And you don't necessarily need to do it like Brandon Sanderson. You don't necessarily need to do it like Robin Hobb or Ursula Le Guin or like whatever. You don't need to do that. Like, find what works for you and stumble your way through it, and write the story that you feel like hasn't been written yet by any means necessary. And I don't know if I would have gotten to that conclusion without stumbling myself. It's so much stumbling.
Yeah, it's all part of the learning process. I think that's it. You'll try and you'll fall down and you'll try and get back up again. As long as you keep trying, I think that's the thing. You find the process that works for you and the style of story that you want to tell as you go on, and you find your voice as you go on, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I feel like I still haven't quite found mine. I would like to. I think it's there. It's in there for sure. I think that with Angie specifically, it's been compared to Abercrombie, not for quality's sake, but for like tone. And I was reading a lot of Abercrombie. I was reading the Age of Madness trilogy when I was writing the like the real first draft. Like I had written a first draft a while back, but then it had gotten rejected by my agent, and he did a he asked me to rewrite and resubmit. Okay. So that whole process, I was reading Age of Madness, and so there's a lot. It's the book has probably gotten its if there's any grit to be had, it's because I was reading Abercrombie for sure.
Well, Angie will be out in only a few days now, next week.
It's already out in Waterstones in the UK, apparently.
Okay, well,
he just threw it out into the store.
There you go. It's out in UK Waterstones. The Broken Binding got their special editions as well with the sprayed edges, so they'll be starting to go out in the next couple of weeks as well. So watch out for them. There's a link down below if people want to order a copy of the Broken Binding version while stocks last. And once they're gone, they're gone. And that is it. So you're busy with book 2. In the trilogy that will be coming out next year, I presume.
Yeah, July of next year, I think is what we're shooting for.
Right. So look out for that.
If I can do it,
you can do it.
I can do it. I got this. Yeah, I just put the PlayStation down for a second. I got this. I'm gonna do it right after we're done here.
You're cool. You're right.
You're cool. You're cool.
Fine. You're fine. You're fine. Okay.
I'm gonna call you at 3 a.m. Steven, you said I was cool. You said I was fine.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Check out Evan's books and watch out for more interviews coming up in the next few weeks on the channel. All right, everybody.
Bye,
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.